Susan's work with Central Furniture Rescue was serendipitously placed into her lap, but her journey forged her life's mission. He helped feed the community here in Cedar Rapids after the derecho, and he traveled to 4 cities in Texas and Louisiana to feed people after Hurricane Ida, where diners and shoppers will be able to look out onto the river to watch the recreational activities going on down here, like whitewater rafting, kayaking, a wading pool, a skate park, and a zip line. They've been here at Jones Park for the last 2 days training, and today we went in the water with them. So the first thing you want to do is stay calm. Then you want to call for help, pick and kick your way out of the ice, and then roll to disperse your weight. We know that Susan's father, Earl, owned this property and lived here with his brother. Colin, in less than an hour, we expect this room will fill up. The Linn County Board of Supervisors will hear the reading for the 3rd time. Actually, it's the 4th time they've been here, but it's their 3rd and final consideration of an ordinance that you may recall caught the attention of 2 state legislators. We're live at 31st Street Drive Southeast in Cedar Rapids, and police have confirmed that there was a deadly shooting here. They've blocked off both ends of the street, and as you can see, the medical examiner has arrived. I've spoken with neighbors who said they saw a body in the street earlier, that the police cars have since blocked it and are now brought in barricades to continue blocking it. I have a neighbor here who did hear some things, and we're going to talk to her. Her name is Desiree Springman. Desiree, can you tell me what you heard earlier this evening? So in Cedar Rapids, police have confirmed there's been a deadly shooting here at Cedar Valley Park. Investigators had been here all morning, and they had blocked off Blakely Road from all traffic. They say a call came in about 7:25 this morning reporting a person was down. When officers arrived on the scene, they found a deceased male in this parking lot with apparent gunshot wounds. This is the 2nd deadly shooting in 14 hours, and police have said both appear to be targeted incidents, but they aren't saying whether or not they're related. They've not yet released the name of the victim until his family has been notified, and police have not yet arrested a suspect. We'll bring you more on this story at 6 o'clock. I want to show our viewers the emblem of Sergeant Smith's badge. The ribbon reads, "End of Watch, April 9th, 2021. This wrecker with the thin blue line will be part of Friday's funeral procession as the community says goodbye to Sergeant Smith. Ron, in exactly a week, voters will decide on city and school officials and gaming referendum Measure G, which is whether or not they want a casino in Cedar Rapids. Today, one of the developers who would operate a casino here if it passed announced they are committed to hiring local construction workers for the project. Yes, Ron, it is very shocking for the neighbors here. Police say that 17-year-old Ethan Orton has been charged with 2 counts of murder in the 1st degree, and because of the seriousness of his crimes, he is being charged as an adult. Investigators say that he killed his parents with a knife and an axe. And Ron, those candidates need those votes to be counted so that the election results can be called official by the auditor's office in order for them to continue campaigning. By law, the runoff election must take place 4 weeks from the election, which is November 30th. Ron, I'm at St. Luke's Hospital, which is a level 3 trauma center and one of 17 facilities around the state receiving traveling healthcare professionals this week. I spoke with the chief medical officer here earlier today, who told me 6 registered nurses and 1 respiratory therapist arrived here yesterday. There were talks of a possible mistrial as one juror was reportedly the holdout, causing the jury to ask the judge for more instruction. It was that instruction, called an Allen charge, and the exasperation among jurors that the defense now argues warrants a new trial. Ron, you may remember that Tiffany O'Donnell held more than 42% of the vote when provisional votes were counted after the November 2nd election, but not the required 50% plus 1 to win the election. So tonight she's facing challenger Amara Andrews in a runoff election for the mayor's seat. It was supposed to be about honoring the man whom Fortune named the 16th greatest world leader. But Fairley wasn't having any of that. He matched the 50 free meals that sponsors were giving away.
When I was growing up, we had a garden, and I used to have to go pick stuff out the garden and give it away. And I used to want to sell it, but my dad was like, nah, we're not gonna sell it.
Fairley says as he grew up, he saw people coming back to give back to his dad, but he didn't understand until he was older.
And I couldn't wait to get in position to be able to do the same thing, and hey, we're here.
That spirit of giving attracted others like him. Some customers came to donate more meals to others.
Come back later on and do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a really tough year, and this is just awesome that somebody
So Good is getting what they deserve, and he really does deserve all the recognition, all the support.
This family gave back to the community by adopting 6 children out of foster care.
Thank you so much to Willie and to the bank and for blessing our family. That's not something I take for granted.
Does it smell good?
Yeah. What do you guys tell Willie?
Thank you, Willie. Thank you.
Fairley's giving turned into a community giving back to him in support. Those records indicate the Andrews had 3 years of unpaid federal taxes. During that time, the couple borrowed from an Illinois builder for the construction of a home in Illinois. Reggie Phillips sold the home to the Andrews on contract with 0 money down. The Andrews added features and amenities, increasing the price of the contract to more than $718,000.
They want to finish off the theater room, and then they wanted to have the basketball court with the 2 goals.
Documents show the Andrews moved in September of 2012. Court documents indicate 13 months later, their payments to Phillips stopped.
We were sitting there on that house, $750,000, chasing them, and we couldn't sell it because they had a contract that said they owned it, even though they weren't making payments on it.
Phillips ended up suing the Andrews for more than $200,000, the difference between the cost to build it and the sale price, and 4 years of real estate taxes. A settlement agreement had the Andrews owing $150,000 to be paid over 7 years.
Listen, I'll cut that down to $150,000. Okay? I'll eat $75,000. And then we'll set it up on payments.
Phillips says, as with the house payments, those settlement payments stopped as well. Last March, a judge ordered Amara Andrews' wages in Cedar Rapids to be garnished for a portion of the agreed-upon monthly payments. Last August, the court found the Andrews were nearly $70,000 behind.
The bill is not relevant to Cedar Rapids. It is old, and as you mentioned, we have been paying.
Andrews is running on issues such as paying your fair share and accuses Mayor Brad Hart of causing $2.3 million in unpaid bills. Andrews says her financial problems are private.
The financial problems that we face as individuals, I don't think are relevant for this position as mayor. I understand that they are disturbing. I don't think voters are interested in my taxes from over 10 years ago. When we had the means, we paid them off, and the issue with the builder is it's a dispute.
Attorney Corey Lorenzen offered his opinion.
From a personal standpoint, I think it would be considered a character issue, but again, that would be something for the voters to decide.
It's not just one event, one thing can happen to anyone, but when it's this pattern of several things over a period of quite a few years, it gives me pause about voting.
Tom and Laura Robinson have lived here for 41 years. Now they're concerned about solar panels being built on prime land behind their farm.
This ground is rated in the top 9.5% of productivity in the state of Iowa. To encumber prime farm ground where we feed the world just doesn't make sense to me.
The Robinsons worry about the other farmers here too and about their own future.
I have rights too. I am really concerned about what this is going to do to our property values.
Tom's sister Paula lives down the road in their childhood home. The proposed solar panels would be outside her front door. The Robinsons are also concerned about drainage tiles being damaged or having water drainage from the farmland blocked.
And that common field is where they are proposing hundreds of thousands of I-beams, and that will affect the tile lines in other farmers' fields.
In the meantime, the family has hired an attorney.
For the Coggin Solar Project, we have banded, my brothers and I have banded, and we are paying out of pocket for lawyers.
Do you not trust the county to look over it?
No, ma'am.
The Robinsons also claim the Board of Supervisors has not listened to their concerns.
Oh yeah, everybody knows it. It's about the money. That's what it amounts to. It's about the money.
The EPA did not release its proposed rules setting ethanol levels for biofuels last year, and its proposal for 2022 came out after the deadline for the rules to be finalized. That alone is setting a precedent that many stakeholders say they are worried about.
I don't understand why the EPA thinks that they can just change the law or disobey the law and do what they want.
The law was enacted by Congress in 2007 to move the country toward energy independence. On Tuesday, the EPA proposed retroactively cutting 1.7 billion gallons from the ethanol volume blended into gasoline and a 2.5 billion gallon cut in 2020, which stakeholders say destroys industry demand and creates uncertainty for the future.
The farming practices and different processes that and technologies that are coming online in the next few years, we could be carbon zero. And why we're not pushing for that. And instead, this EPA is cutting those gallons, and it's hard to make improvements on things when we're cutting things.
Those levels are the renewable fuel standard set in statute by Congress at 15 billion gallons of ethanol per year. Congresswoman Ashley Hinson introduced legislation last week called the Defend the Blend Act to make the EPA follow the law.
A lot of our economy is reliant on the agriculture industry. So long term, that's what this is really about. It's about protecting the future of our entire state and our entire region, and making sure that access to the market is still there and not being dictated by government bureaucrats who, again, are not following the law.
Until that law passes, industry experts say this uncertainty about the ethanol levels impacts gas prices. In 2017, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals said the RFS was intended to be a market-forcing mechanism, which experts say is not what's happening with these proposed rules. In Vinton, Michele White, News 7, KWWL. Jack Shepard owns 100 acres of farmland on the other side of the Cedar River from the Duane Arnold plant. He leases the land to his nephew, Greg Butterfield, who farms it. Butterfield says he has caught 3 people on his uncle's property in the last month who admitted to being Nextera's subcontractors.
Told him in no circumstances is he ever supposed to be on this land and or tromping through my land. I mean, it's leased ground and it's my crop. And when you're damaging it, you're costing me money.
What was his response?
We have permission from Nextera to be here.
Where Butterfield has found them was driving through the fields and over a creek bed to the limits of his property here.
Okay, that's where my edge of my land goes.
Shepard says he has talked to the Lynn County Sheriff about people trespassing on his land.
He said, we will arrest him, but we have to catch him on the property. And I said, well, I'm not out there. So it'll be on to the neighbors or the farmer that runs this land that will have to say they're there so they can get there. And that's kind of a tough thing to do.
But these farmers are good neighbors. Some of them have reported seeing about 8 other incidents of trespassing on Shepard's land. Larry Germain says he found 2 people trespassing on his land, too.
I told him this ain't the easement road to the graveyard. And then I also said that most of the neighbors around here really don't care for trespassers. You better watch out.
The State Department and Pentagon haven't been able to quantify exactly how many Americans are still in Afghanistan. But on August 17th, the Biden administration said there were as many as 15,000 Americans left in the country. The administration says more than 5,000 have been evacuated. But on Monday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said there were likely closer to 100 Americans who remain, and none were evacuated on the last 5 flights to leave Kabul. Those numbers don't add up.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, look, for example, in the area that I'm the vice chairman of on intelligence, if we find that somebody in the intelligence community gave bad advice or didn't do their job, they should be removed. They should be fired, especially if they're Senate confirmed kind of people.
Hinson agrees.
Just this week, Leader McCarthy called back our veterans and our ranking members on the committees of jurisdiction here to try to ask questions, force Nancy Pelosi to bring to the floor a bill that would actually ask for some accountability from the administration. They wouldn't even recognize our member on the floor to bring that to a vote.
Both say they will continue to put pressure on their colleagues and the administration for the truth.
God did not make this soil to have solar panels on it.
The Robinson family has owned 280 acres of prime farmland near Coggin for 3 generations. They were among the majority of about 30 speakers at Monday night's meeting who opposed the project. Idaho-based Clenera is behind the project. The Robinsons are worried about the vulnerability of the land for such a large-scale project.
Clenera has said they would be responsible for fixing immediately any tile that were damaged. And I don't know how they're possibly going to do that. They haven't even started tracking adjacent ground.
The Robinsons hired an attorney to protect their rights to maintain the integrity of their farmland that is next to the proposed project, which would put 350,000 solar panels on the 750 acres by leasing the land for 35 years. The Planning and Zoning Commission's vote Monday to recommend the Board of Supervisors deny the request to rezone the land is not binding, and it is at odds with the county's planning director's recommendation to approve it.
On the one hand, you have renewable energy production, which is important, but on the other hand, we have high-value agricultural land, which is also important, and that's the tough job of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Supervisors.
The Robinsons say their parents survived the economic downturn farmers here suffered in the 1980s to end up at this point.
And this is another valley for us, but we believe that we're going to do the right thing. We're going to fight the good fight and keep the integrity of the life that we have lived here.
This is the substation in Coggin that SIPCO wants to expand eastward within 50 feet of the farmer's property adjacent to it. But in passionate testimony last night, those landowners described a long fight with SIPCO over a broken drainage tile main they say SIPCO broke the last time it expanded that substation.
We now know that existing tile, they tore it out. It's gone. They took it out. They didn't want it there. And now the reroutes have never worked.
The Lynn County Planning and Development Director said a permit would be contingent upon SIPCO paying a $20,000 bond to fix the damage and any other damage from future construction.
Yes, we can hold them accountable. I believe there's conditions in their previous case from 2013 that says they won't damage drainage tile, which it sounds like unfortunately they have done that. So we can hold them accountable for fixing that tile. The process we would go through to do that would be to get an engineer or another licensed professional to investigate the issue, which is being done currently. So we would use the same process.
The Lynn County Board of Adjustment voted to table a decision on SIPCO's permit application until an engineer investigated the drainage problems on the Robinsons' farm.
In the absence of an outright denial, we're satisfied with the Board of Adjustment's choosing to wait for additional information, which is, certainly appropriate.
For now, SIPCO will have to get that engineer's report to the Board of Adjustment before it will decide whether or not to grant that permit to expand the substation. In Coggin, Michele White, News 7 KWWL. Cedar Rapids remembers floods like the one of 2008. To prevent that level of flooding again, the city is building another floodgate and a flood wall in Czech Village. Today, work began on the 16th Avenue Southwest floodgate that will roll across the road during a flood emergency. The city completed a similar one on the southeast side of the bridge and a new underground stormwater gate on the Czech Village side. When the Cedar River floods, the gate will close and prevent river water from backing up into the city's storm sewer system and flooding the streets.
Czech Village and Nubo were the two lowest areas, so that's why we started here, and we're making really good progress on both sides to get those lowest areas protected first.
Both for function and aesthetics, the city is also building a permanent flood wall between the river and the National Czech and Slovak Museum and Library. It will be hidden on the museum side by a raised terrace. to be used for outdoor activities at the museum.
Flood are very infrequent. We want to make sure that the amenities, the community can embrace the river. So, that's one of the reasons we want to try to terrace this area up so people can look over the wall and see the river and have events here in the museum. So you're not just seeing a big wall, you actually see the events and can enjoy the river as well.
Auto body shops are experiencing a backlog of up to 3 months to get their customers' vehicles repaired. The national shortages in labor and the supply chain are slowing the workflow of these businesses, who are trying to repair vehicles that were damaged by the derecho nearly 15 months ago. Sherry Schmidt says many of her customers worked on repairing their damaged homes before their vehicles. She says when she used to order parts, she received them in
a day or two. You could have them next day.
Now she says she has never seen these wait times.
We never had indefinite back order on a part, and now it's commonplace to say we can't get this part for a month, 2 months, might not, they have no idea.
Which causes scheduling how many vehicles the shop can take difficult. And the labor shortages are affecting the supply chain shortages. Dixon Neighbor says the supply shortage is the worst he has seen in 27 years in the business.
Getting labor on that end to make the supplies so we can get the supplies to us. I've heard anywhere from there's containers out on the sea with our parts in it.
I actually had 2 people call in sick today, so that people are just not wanting to work like they used to. I definitely think it had to do with the unemployment benefits they received. It was very difficult to find anybody that wanted to work during that time.
Schmidt says her technicians work on 50 cars a week, prioritizing the vehicles that can't be driven first. But that means longer wait times for other customers. In Marion and Hiawatha, Michele White, News 7, KWWL. It doesn't happen often, but Cedar Rapids firefighters know how to rescue people who have fallen through the ice.
This is one of those low-frequency, high-risk events where it's very important to refresh on the basic skills. And at the same time, every year there's new techniques, new equipment, so it's good to try out those too.
These training exercises also get firefighters used to the wetsuits that protect them from hypothermia and are so different from their fire protective gear. They say it does not take long for the cold water to cause the body to start shutting down. If they were to rescue someone,
they're going to be probably in one position, not moving a lot and not being able to move. And in fact, your muscles can get almost like an atrophy into them where you don't even have the strength to pull yourself out anyhow, which is why we will also train about trying to get into these while we're on the way there as fast as we can.
Because time is critical in a water rescue. While these situations are rare, Wagner has used these skills.
Not on a person. I have gone out on the ice for a stranded dog.
The firefighters practiced self-rescue exercises with ice picks, and then they practiced using rescue devices. We jumped into the water too and learned some self-rescue techniques. If you find yourself in this situation, you won't have one of these buoyant suits to keep you afloat. So the first thing you want to do is stay calm. Then you want to call for help, pick and kick your way out of the ice, and then roll to disperse your weight. It was all in a day's work.
Tidy work.
To keep them sharp for what they hope never happens. The Cedar Rapids Fire Department will have 3 more training exercises back here tomorrow at Jones Park, but the best advice that they have for you is to stay off the ice. In Cedar Rapids, Michele White, News 7, KWWL. Winterfest at the Maine Amana Colony brings people together and outdoors and helps give a boost to the businesses.
It's really nice for them. January and February get really kind of slow in the Amana colonies for tourism because not many people want to travel in Iowa in the wintertime, and I can't blame them.
Some of the more popular events were the chainsaw art, the log saw, ice sculptures, and a ham shot put. The winner threw a ham more than 31 feet. You think you're going to do this every year?
Probably. I had a lot of fun doing this.
Miranda Clank's father and her husband entered the beard contest, the biggest draw of the day.
Again.
Judges handed out awards for longest beard, longest time without shaving, Most Creative, and Best Beard, which went to Bob Lynch.
Flabbergasted, actually. I didn't think I was going to win anything. I just came out to have fun.
Clank's husband may not have won the beard contest, but he won lunch for a week. For throwing a ham, she won a ham.
My husband's gonna take him for lunch. Yeah, ham sandwiches. Ham sandwiches.
The Amana firefighters served chili, cider, and coffee to raise money for the department. There was also a wine, beer, and coffee walk between the coffee shop, brewery, and 5 wineries in the main village, which is also home to Iowa's oldest winery. In the Amana colonies, Michele White, News 7 KWWL. At issue is Amara Andrews' mailer that attacked opponent Tiffany O'Donnell, but was sent out in duplicate form from both Andrews' campaign and a political action committee called Iowa Voter Info. He says when he found out, he submitted his resignation, adding, "Politics has become a dirty game and one I don't ever want to play."
It was a combination of not knowing who paid for it, seeing the toxicity level rise, and unsure about anything related to ethics and the election, just caused me to resign.
More than dirty politics, the mailers may have violated Iowa code.
You're getting into a slippery situation when you have a PAC and a candidate sending out a mailer that's the exact same, if that's the case in this situation, and then having different attributions on it. But
Lorenzen says they'd be subject to an ethics complaint with the Iowa's Ethics and Campaign Disclosure Board. Mayoral candidate Tiffany O'Donnell's campaign filed one such complaint today against the Andrews campaign for violation of Iowa code, for not having proper attribution for those duplicate mailers, and the transfer of $9,000 in campaign funds to Iowa Voters Info, which appears to be an unregistered PAC.
there is potentially a criminal element to that, depending on the extent of the failure to disclose. So it's really a case-by-case situation, but there is the potential for criminal charges.
Andrews' records also show that same PAC gave an in-kind contribution of more than $7,500 for direct mail, those duplicative mailers that caused Shriver to resign. In Cedar Rapids, Michele White, News 7, KWWL.
Futon beds, which are so amazing.
Watching Susan Johnston peruse through furniture donations, you can't tell if she is the little girl opening Santa's gifts or Santa's helper handing out the gifts.
I don't know if you saw those 2 bean bags. Oh my word. There are going to be 2 teenagers totally happy with those.
Her nonprofit, Central Furniture Rescue, started as a clothing giveaway at her church.
It's going to go in here. It'll go in this one probably.
It evolved into something much more.
The woman who had been in charge of it for 25 years comes up to me and says, "I can't do this anymore. You need to do this."
Then Susan met a woman who needed furniture, so she asked her church for donations.
We filled her entire apartment with everything she needed, and each item came with a story. We also had a Christmas tree, Christmas gifts, and Thanksgiving dinner. And when I left, I was like, if God did that with a single prayer, what more does He want from us?
Susan put her relationship building skills to work and dug into her own pocket to buy furniture. To understand how Susan got here, we have to go to the beginning of her journey, one that led her to a redemptive purpose. Here, in a courtroom in Decorah, young Susan and her 3 siblings were removed from their parents and put into foster care. Susan was homeless at 1 year old.
This is where I was sitting, and for the day at the courthouse when I was very young, probably around 3 or 4 years old, and I remember looking back and seeing my 2 sisters. Susan would have been one of them, and it was just one of those moments that I knew it was going to be different after that.
It was. Susan and their sister Dana went to a foster home in Des Moines.
I always thought I wanted to find where my sister was as I was growing up. And I always wondered if I'd see her on the streets, you know.
Today, Susan found answers, validation, and redemption.
And I remembered, you know, suddenly those 3 courtroom watching a grandson being adopted and having all of this emotion and wondering why I'm the one with the most emotion. It's not even me adopting this child.
Susan's life experiences intersect with her clients in many ways.
Some of the people we help are kids that age out of foster care. We help foster parents who need furniture for kids that they've taken in. We help people who are struggling with mental health.
Going back to where she first lost the only home she had ever known, Susan discovered moments that shaped her life, her faith, and her work. Together, we visited the graves of her birth parents.
I had a reoccurring dream growing up of 2 mommies, and they looked exactly alike, and they looked just like my adopted mommy. But one was the mean one who lived in the closet, and the other one was the nice one who would hold me and tell me everything was going to be okay. So this is like, okay, well, we have some closure to the mean mommy in the closet.
Do you think you'd be where you are right now?
No.
And she learned her faith in God comes back to the church right across the street from her parents' graves.
Church we went to when we were little. Interesting. The one most important thing in your life is that introduction to Jesus. And if that's the one thing that he did for us, amen.
From courthouse records, we found Susan and Elaine's childhood home, but it was too painful for Susan to visit. We know that Susan's father, Earl, owned this property and lived here with his brother when he was an old man. But the neighbors don't remember Susan, her siblings, or her mother. We continue now with Susan's story. We started in Decorah, where she was placed into foster care. Tonight we pick up in Des Moines, where she was adopted by a family. Susan came to this house in Des Moines when she was 3 years old. Paul and Louise Blakely adopted her and her sister Dana, who was 1 year older.
Tree back there, I built a tree house in. I had a rope also hanging from a branch, because then I'd Tarzan down.
She had a normal childhood here for a few years. Her mother nurtured her and taught her important life lessons.
Mom was pretty wise. She's a good mama. And she's holding me as I'm crying. And when I start to, breathing again, she goes, "Sweetheart, it's just your turn. Remember what this feels like when it's someone else's turn."
Still, there was pain. She watched her father drink too much, and both of her parents had health problems. Susan's father died first. One day, her life of nurturing, stability, and normalcy was upended, just as she was growing into young womanhood.
Mom was put into a nursing home. And I'm sure the words hospice was said, but I didn't know. I was young. And I had to pack a bag and we went to the Miller's house. So to foster, just like that.
Susan was 14 years old when her mother died. Susan and Dana went back into foster care, but continued attending the same school. The trauma left her grasping for comfort and a familiar routine.
A few times, instead of walking home to foster, I walked home here and I got the mail. I did the normal things that I used to do. And it would be the Flintstones was on. And then I would walk back to foster care.
Susan's adopted sister was older and married. She took Susan and Dana into her home in Ames. Again, trauma was close behind her.
I was a selfish teenage girl going through hell. And she was trying to have a family. There were times that I'd come home high or drunk and I'd end up in my car. I'd end up at a friend's house. And once I graduated, I was just asked to leave. I couch surfed for a while.
She moved to a small apartment around the corner, began working in a diner, met her future husband, and prepared to welcome her first child.
She was like my comfort when all hell was breaking loose everywhere else. Keith was what you would call today as a functional alcoholic.
The family was evicted, and Susan left her husband. She was homeless yet again. That's when the woman who would later pass the baton to Susan for the clothing giveaway took in Susan and her children. An ironic twist in her story is that Central Furniture Rescue, since its inception, has been on the brink of homelessness.
I am no better off than some of the people we serve. I am always a phone call away from a 60-day notice.
She got another notice that she needs to move by the end of September.
I just want permanency. It's almost funny, Michelle. It's almost funny because it's just like, okay, everything's going to be okay. It's fine. Everything's okay.
Which is what your mom always told you when you were little.
Mm-hmm.
Those words from Susan's mother became Susan's mantra in her life, with her family, and in her work. Susan's work with Central Furniture Rescue was serendipitously placed into her lap, but her journey forged her life's mission. Susan says her story is not one of sadness, but of redemption and purpose, a life's mission. Michele White, News 7, KWWL. Susan Johnston was taken from her parents and put into foster care as a baby. That sent her on a journey of adoption back to foster care and to her work today, helping people touched by homelessness. After our story aired, some of her birth family reached out to her.
I knew right away. She reminded me of Earl, and just knowing the history, I just knew it was her.
The cousins met last weekend.
It's been wonderful because I used to wonder, my parents wondered, so many, Auntie Sylvia, her mom, we all could hear the stories of wondering what happened to these kids. Emotional, but it was wonderful.
It's like I've found my humans.
This reunion extended to the church where Susan's parents brought her as a baby. Today, Big Canoe Lutheran Church and its youth group presented her nonprofit, Central Furniture Rescue, with a check for $600 and 4 truckloads of furniture.
So Cedar Rapids is getting blessed by people in Highland, Decorah area. And how cool is that?
Some of the church members remember Susan and her siblings and how they were taken from their parents.
I'm the kid absorbing all of these stories that I never knew.
And to hear their stories and for them to hear our stories. And all these people today that remembered so-and-so and the families.
Susan says it's like bringing her past into her future and completing the sense of family, something she strives to bring her clients. In Decorah, Michele White, News 7, KWWL. Willie Ray Fairley says his lifelong dream is to help people in need. The derecho, he says, was his wake-up call to go do it.
And that's the mission, is to be there when people need, and if we can't do anything else, we can at least put some food in them.
Fairley has raised about $15,000 to help pay for this trip to Kentucky, where he is taking supplies, including ribs.
Almost 200 slabs.
And there were more of those honks today.
All the honks go all day. A lot of times people see us out, they hit the horn, and even when we're not out, we can hear the horn on the inside. Now all we do is throw the hands up.
It's that love Fairley shares with the community that kept him busy on Wednesday, fielding phone calls and visiting with customers who brought donations, well wishes, and thanks.
Yeah, the community has definitely put their arms around me and dropped off a lot of donations yesterday, and got the Venmo out there, and people have definitely showed their love, and we definitely appreciate it.
He says without their support, he couldn't do this.
All right, well, we're gonna get the guys and get together. We're gonna go get a pallet of water, a pallet of charcoals, get that at the top so to keep the weight right, and then we're gonna start loading up the other things and be ready to roll here soon.
Fairley plans to get to Mayfield before dark on Thursday. He's also taking Christmas presents to the children who lost everything to last weekend's tornado.
But if there's a time when we can lend a helping hand, most definitely we'll do that as well.
Fairley says this is living the dream and one he wants to pass on to his kids. In Cedar Rapids, Michele White, News 7, KWWL. Jake Schroeder manages Tegler, Wrecker, and Crane in Dubuque, and when he heard about Sergeant Smith's death, he got to work on designing this wrecker as a way to honor Sergeant Smith and to help the community grieve.
I woke up to the message that said, did we lose a trooper last night?
The news of Sergeant Smith's death spurred Schroeder to act. It was an idea he had been planning for more than 2 years, to dedicate one of his wreckers to honor police officers.
We develop relationships with emergency personnel because we work so much.
At scenes of accidents where sometimes lives are lost. For Jake, there's one word that comes to mind that sums up the service of the men and women in law enforcement: courage.
I thought it fit the topic, the subject.
Schroeder hopes his wrecker brings comfort to a community grieving one of their own officers.
I hope that if family and friends see this going down the road, it just brings them a smile or a tear or a thought of memories that they may have had.
It's in the quiet moments of contemplation Schroeder feels the weight of the issues of life and death.
After the scenes are cleared, that's when you start to think about things.
He says he wants to do his part to support those who lay down their lives for the community.
We'll be there if they ever need us.
Now take a look at the emblem with Sergeant Smith's badge on it. The ribbon reads, "End of watch, April 9th, 2021. Now on Friday, this memorial type of wrecker will be parked on a corner during the funeral procession as the community says goodbye to Sergeant Smith. Jason Rogers, or Doc, once served as a combat medic. That's where his nickname was born. His cobbler business, that's another story.
That would take all day if you had to do it by hand.
A former boss of Doc's wife asked him to buy his shop and offered to train him. With a week of one-on-one training, videos, and help from an old hand, Doc's shoe repair was born.
We wanted to do more things and be able to, hang a gone fishing sign on the door if we needed to. But, and we didn't anticipate that, the number of other shoe repair guys were going to shrink so much. But COVID hit him hard.
For Doc, gone fishing means more time for music concerts. He says he always had a knack for fixing things. Sometimes it was Marines, now it's shoes.
That's the easy part. But the thing you really need to know is how to properly use, maintain, and repair machines. Because these machines, the good machines are the old machines. They run forever as long as you take care of them.
Those machines date as far back as the 1930s, reflecting the age of the art and his love of music. Bobby.
Bob Weir is the singer now for the Grateful Dead. He's old, he's kind of crotchety.
Loose Lucy.
Because everything on it when I got it was all the threads, all of the screws, everything was loose and everything had to be retightened up. And it's still not quite right.
Tennessee Jed.
He's been beat up, but he's patched up now.
Doc eventually figured out how to patch up all of his machines.
I just want to be proficient. I just want to do a good job, and I want people to be happy with it. 37.45 is the total. All right, take care.
So if you don't mind waiting a little bit, Doc will fix your shoes and then go fishing. Reporting in Marion, Michele White, News 7 KWWL.